everyone, it's Stephanie again, and you are tuned into the review of Married at First Sight, Season 15, Episode 11. All right, before we get started, don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be the first to find out when I post these videos. All right, guys, thank you so much for everyone who have purchased my Conversation Starter card game. For those who don't know, I created this very fun card game called Sip and Share, a fun way to be nosy. It's in this great travel-friendly box. It snaps closed so you can always have it with you. But it's a conversation starter card game that I came up with that has questions regarding love and life, general life questions, sex and career. And it's a great way to create new connections or deepen current connections, because I've had a lot of people play it with their spouse or fiance or somebody they're dating, or it's also something for a great game night, whether that's staying in or going out. And it just fosters a lot of really great conversation, a lot of fun stuff. You grab your favorite cocktail or beverage and you just have a good time. And most people don't even get through the deck, because the beautiful thing about these questions is it leads to other questions and people kind of go down a rabbit hole and it ends up being a great time, because of course I've played myself. So I'm going to put the website in the description box and also underneath here as well, and at the end of the video. But the website is sipandsharegame.com. So thank you for those who've purchased and thank you for those who are purchasing. All right, let's get started. So this week's episode, the couples, so every season, the couples do this exercise of writing a letter to themselves, or the last few seasons, writing a letter to themselves, basically their current self now to their younger self, or a particular time in life that was significant. And it's a way for them to get to know each other in a way that they didn't before. You know, it's usually after the 1 month portion. And it also gives the other person an idea of, you know, an aspect of their personality or their life experience that shaped who they are now. And it's a very therapeutic process. I've told people to do it. I've done it myself as well. It's something that is really, it can be really emotional. It can explain a lot. It can share a lot. I love when they do this. So yes, they do this week. They process that stuff together. And then they also take each other to a very significant place in their childhood, or something that is reminiscent of where they grew up, or who they grew up with, etc. So we see all of that this week. I thought it was a good episode, and I'm just going to kick it off with Morgan and Ben. There has been a lot said about Morgan and Ben. I touch on them every week, but Morgan and Ben, last week I kind of went in on Ben, and the reason I did that, and the reason I'm going to stick to that, although I've already explained kind of like how I feel about Morgan. Morgan is obviously very problematic, but I wanted to hold Ben accountable because, like I said last week, I feel like Ben, being the one who tends to be a little more reserved, and he's not like the louder participant in the relationship, he's not the aggressor, that personality type tends to get a lot of passes, and so we may not see them as someone who is problematic or someone who is contributing to the issues of the relationship. And I've seen that in real time, in real life, where there's a person and that target is on that person because they tend to be the louder one, and we know they're the wrong one, and then you're missing a lot with this other person in a relationship who contributes to the demise of the relationship. So it's really important that both people are accountable. I've always thought that Morgan would probably be the demise of the relationship, and I've always thought that she was going to be the one who was tougher, and I still say that. But Ben has some stuff going on too. This week, I really just, what do I say about Morgan and Ben? Because it's really, they're not going to work out, but I've said that because I never really thought that they were like perfectly matched as well. I did think that when they were in a fun space and a lighthearted space, that they were enjoyable because they're cheeky, they joke and stuff like that, but I never thought that they were matched really well. And this week just showed how much some of the stuff that happened at the beginning just completely eviscerated the opportunity for anything to happen if it could have happened. We see Morgan struggles with letting people back in when it comes to her trust being broken. And what's really frustrating watching Morgan is that like she wears that as a badge of honor. You know, like when somebody loses my trust, I don't let them back in. Okay, girl. Well, that's why you had to be on the show, because you could not find a way to move past that to be able to sustain a relationship. And here you are wearing that as a badge of honor again, instead of saying, okay, if you're gonna put yourself in a situation where you can't just run out of, then make it worth your while. Challenge yourself to do the opposite of what you normally do, because that is gonna be a hindrance no matter who you end up with, if you end up with anyone. But she kind of wears it as this badge of honor and this thing that other people have to try to get her to change because she's so badass about it. And it's just going to keep her very lonely. That spirit of unforgiving is not, marriage requires a lot of forgiveness. And it doesn't have to be like this big bad stuff that, oh God, you have to forgive all these things. There could be daily forgiveness that you have to have, because it's like minute things. It's two people living this life together. You're not always going to get it right. And so forgiveness is like a key component in sustaining any really good relationship, because you may have to forgive friends, etc. But being so intimate in a marriage is really important. So for her to not be able to know how to do that, which stems from relationships with family, and clearly her relationship with her father, she wears that as a badge of honor. Like she kicked him out of her life and she's done, and she kind of runs that whole dynamic, and she's taking it into her marriage as well. And the thing is, our family and friends, oftentimes we're like, love it or leave it. And our families, they love it because they don't have to interact with us in a particular way that is damning to their lives. Sometimes, for the most part, they can be like, okay, that's Morgan and whatnot. Except your spouse can leave it. If it becomes detrimental to their life and your dynamic, they can leave it. And even if this situation didn't happen with the whole nursing thing and Justin running to, Ben running to Justin and that trust being, all of that stuff, even if that wasn't the case, there would be something else, because that's just like a spirit of unforgiveness that she carries, and it's really toxic to the relationship. And she is, I don't know, it really goes too far. I feel like even when he read his letter to her, which I felt like was such a slap in the face from her, I get it. You feel away, but then feel away, stand on that, and then move on. Or say, hey, you know what? I'm in a place where I can't move on. And so I don't think we should do this very intimate experience together because I'm not ready to do that, or I don't feel comfortable doing that. But to let him read his letter, which really was a very intimate letter, and you can see him struggling, and I'll jump to him in a second. And then to say, I'm not comfortable, and then getting up and leaving. Girl, why did you come over there? Why did you go over there? I felt like that was really, really selfish. Now you're just being a jerk. Now you're just trying to be a jerk, because you didn't have to listen to his letter. You could have said, listen, I don't think that we should do this. I'm not comfortable, and I don't want, like for me, be protective of both of your experiences. Like, I don't want you to share with me, just like I may not be comfortable sharing with you. But to do that whole thing, I don't know if production forced her to go or whatever the case may be, but I really didn't like saying that. I thought that that was like a really lackluster move. I'm keeping it nice. I just didn't like, I thought that that was really selfish. And yeah, I don't have much hope for Morgan in this process, because she's carried a lot of baggage into this process, and even there's a lot of lack of trust between the both of them. Even when he got COVID and they couldn't get married at the same time they were supposed to, one of her things was, I hope that he actually has COVID and it's not this thing that he may be pulling out and not really being ready. A lot of that stuff stems from trust and abandonment and manipulative experiences that stem from our childhood or past experiences that we carry with us. It's not then. For him COVID is a very real thing. I mean, we know that. So for the thing to be, well, I hope that's actually true. Otherwise, it could be that this person doesn't want me. There's like some issues going on there and abandonment going on there and lack of trust and historical stuff going on there that she's bringing to the present. So that's my 2 cents with Morgan. I've never been a fan, but they both have issues. So now I'm going to go to Justin. I'm sorry, why do I keep saying Justin? Probably because Justin and Ben are like closer than Ben and Morgan. Here's my thing with Ben. Ben, this is the thing with marriage. You have to be careful about wrapping your mind around all the reasons why you think you are ready to be married. And you really need to be mindful of the reasons why you might be, why you might struggle in a marriage, and work on those things. Like, a lot of people hear marriage and they're ready for it, and they romanticize all the reasons why they're ready for it. Those things are not going to be hard to adjust to. The fun stuff, the easy things, the things you bring to the table. It's more like, how are you going to manage some of the stuff that you're going to struggle with, or some of the baggage that that you bring that are going to be problematic in a marriage. And I believe that marriage is a mirror, in the sense that there are some things that only show up when you're married. So you can't control that. But the stuff that you can control, do your best to do that. I love that he said that he got a therapist, because that's really important. I think it's great. I hate that people wait to get into some sort of therapy when their life is falling apart, because people don't get the, tangible, immediate satisfaction in therapy. It's like, if I go online and I buy something, I can get it, Prime, I can get it in a few days, I can see it. But people often say, oh, therapy, I can't afford that, or I don't have time for that, or maybe because it takes too long, because we live in this microwave society. But I'm glad that he at least says, you know what, these things have been coming up for a while, and so it's important for me to now get into it. Better late than never, for sure. But he has some issues, and I feel like I've seen Ben unravel throughout this process. He looks really hurt. I don't think it's necessarily her, even if it's her, part of her. It's not all her. They haven't had this long, emotionally intimate interaction that it could be all her. She might be triggering some of that stuff, and in the experience with her, he is seeing himself in a way and kind of saying, oh my God, these are things I can't avoid anymore. Here's how it's showing up. Even if it is not meant for her, because she is not his forever person, but it would show up and be problematic for a person that he really does like, and or really cares about, or his person. And that is the scary part. And I think that's what he's seeing. Wait a minute, I saw myself in this way. I thought I was ready for all this stuff, but here, there are things that are coming up that are problematic, and I am getting in the way of this. And here's what's coming up for me. And I thought I was this. I thought I felt this way. I thought I would do this, and I'm not doing that. And that's really important that he recognizes that. And that's why I say, although Morgan is the one who is more assertive, more aggressive, more problematic in a lot of ways, there's some underlying things that are happening with Ben. So I'm glad that he is able to say, hey, it's time that I kind of focus on these things. These things are showing up that I thought weren't a thing, or didn't know were a thing, or thought I had put to bed, and now I have to work on them. Second part with Ben. So I know that they have this unique experience where they are, going through this thing that most people have not. And so they rely on each other and they lean on each other. But as I was watching this week, something kind of whispered in my mind, I wonder how Ben is talking about her. Is he talking about her hey, there are these things that are happening that I'm uncomfortable with, or here's where I'm struggling, where it's genuine and respectful? Or is he talking about her in a way that is degrading? And that's something that's really important. Yeah, because I've seen a lot of people say they have the right to talk to each other about what's going on and vent. And if she has a problem with that, there's a way you can talk about your spouse, and there's a way that you shouldn't talk about your spouse, because it's not respectful to that person. It's not respectful to your marriage, and it's just not a good look. So a part of me is wondering, what is Alexis hearing? What is Ben really saying? Because we see one side of Ben, and then we're seeing there's something else there. Ben is being incongruent with what he's saying. He's saying he's not going to do it, but he did it. Regardless of if we feel like he should be able to do that, honesty is the bigger thing here, because now if somebody lies about something they don't have to lie about, or something that they said they wouldn't do and now they're doing, then you start questioning everything. So there's like character things going on here with him. And if you really feel a certain way, why not say it? You know, why are we sitting here people pleasing in a situation that is kind of detrimental for you and your marriage? You know, Mitch, I feel like jumped the gun a little early, but we could take a page out of Mitch's book, which I didn't think we'd say this whole series, but we could take a page out of Mitch's book and say, okay, he felt a way and he wanted to be honest about it and let his partner know, because he's in the relationship with that person. He didn't, yes, he talked to his brother in terms of what should I do, and it was like day 1 or 2 of the honeymoon. But he was like adult enough to say, this is how I feel and I'm concerned and I want to put it out there and I don't want to be inauthentic with you. And Ben is not doing that. Ben is kind of running to Justin and, you know, whispering sweet nothings with Justin, and now it feels a certain way and it's still not a good look. And although this is a unique experience where, yes, this is what they're here for, to kind of share with each other and lean on each other, etc., the reality is if your spouse has a problem, and here's why I say this, because I know that with them, they're unique, they're new to each other. This is a show, so like some of the stuff applies, but some of it doesn't. But the bigger picture, because the way that I watch it is like, what can we learn from this? What can I learn from this? What can I share with this? Because a lot of people are pointing the finger watching the show, and then they're showing up just like some of these people. So what can we get from it? If your spouse really has a problem with you sharing particulars of your relationship with a person, you're going to have to choose if that person is more important or if your relationship is more important, and redirect your sharing with your spouse, especially if it's a particular person. And I've seen it happen in real life where spouses rely on a particular individual and that spouse has a problem with it. And that spouse can have a problem with it, and it is something that you have to navigate. So learning boundaries in relationships, in your marriage, and knowing what lines, I wouldn't say lines to cross, but what lines to draw and how your partner feels about it, and respecting them in that experience is really important. You can definitely talk to someone about your marriage or where you're struggling. Like, I think that's really important to have support, but it's also important to be mindful of respecting your relationship in doing so. And that's a dance, and that's significant. And that's something that they need to learn, even if they're on a show, because some of these couples have lasted. So it's not just, well, they're on a show, so he has to do what he has to do, and Morgan sucks. And because I get it, like a lot of people don't like her. I don't love her either. I don't think she's that great either, but just from an objective point of view, there's areas of improvement for both here. But yes, I feel like Morgan is the aggressor. So that is my 2 cents on Ben and Morgan, because I feel like I've drawn on and on about them. They didn't really have much else going on in terms of their interactions and stuff like that. So that's Morgan and Ben. All right, we have, let's see, Lindy and Miguel. Let's jump into Lindy and Miguel, because they made me smile so much this episode. I really enjoy, I say this every week, but I really do enjoy watching them, even though, you know, there's the things that I think, could be problematic with Miguel, could be problematic with Lindy, but I feel like they're progressing really well. I feel like they've had some hiccups. They've had some things where we're side-eyeing each one like, okay, that's a problem. But they seem to be genuinely like enjoying each other and genuinely happy that the process is going as it's going, and like pleasantly surprised that how I could be matched with someone who I'm having such a great time with, who I feel has done like a 180. And maybe it's not so much a 180 as it is we're now revealing, or we're being revealed who he is beyond the surface, is Miguel, because he came in very, very much in his head, very much in control of the things he can control, very much a skeptic, very much almost like talking himself out of like enjoying this process and possibly falling in love with someone, or wanting to go past the 8 weeks, to someone who has really fallen into it and is like in the wave of it and really happy. He appears really happy, good and bad with the stuff that he has seen, just really happy and happy to show her elements of who he is and share things that are important to him and share things that maybe aren't so great in his past and what that has done to him as you know, in terms of creating who he is. I mean, mind blown. He told her that he loved her this episode, which I was really surprised, not because I couldn't genuinely see that he really was like into her, but I was pleasantly surprised because, like I said, Miguel has been the one who has been very much in his head about what can and can't happen in such a short amount of time, coupled with what has never happened for him in past relationships. And so to see him have that genuine moment, it was sweet, you know, and to see her receive that and be so giddy about it, it was really sweet. I really enjoy watching them. I really hope that it works for them. Same thing with Lindy, like her, even what we take, well, most of us take it for granted, being able to dance and like seeing someone dance. At first I was like, what? Like, this is not that big of a deal. But for her, it is, because she wasn't allowed to dance growing up. And so now just this freedom to express herself and do this thing that is for most people so simple, like not a big deal, and to share that with him and just to have that conversation. I really enjoy watching them. I really do. And I think that as they get to know each other longer, and even the fact that Miguel said, you know, even mentioning kids in the future, it's really nice to see. It's really nice to see, because I think there's ups and downs. And because we have such a heaviness of Morgan and Ben, it was just pleasant to see like easy breezy, beautiful cover girl with the two of them, because it was just, they were great. They were pleasant. It was genuine. You can tell that they're really well connected and that they're enjoying each other. So that is Lindy and Miguel. Next we have Stasha and Nate. So Stasha and Nate, I really liked seeing their interaction with his father towards the end of the episode, where they went to his neighborhood and Nate was talking about you know, what it was like growing up and when his, I believe, stepmom and father got a divorce, and why he looks up to his father, and seeing his father get emotional. It definitely was such a tender moment, because we know we saw him earlier on in the season say that he doesn't do that. He doesn't get emotional. And even him standing there and saying, you know, I've welled up before, I just hide it. And I just felt like in that moment, I just looked at him and I felt sad for him, because he comes probably from a time where, you know, men aren't supposed to show emotions, and his wife leaves, or whatever situation, but Nate's mom never was in his life, and now he's raising the kids and he's alone, and you know, whatever happened, and this ability to rise above and to continue to be there, which is really difficult for any person, and to really keep it together. And then also to be in I don't know if what armed services he was, but also to kind of be very detached from his emotions as probably a means of survival. To watch him kind of soften just lets you know that there's so much more there, and he probably thought that would be beneficial not to pass on the weight of those emotions to his son. But in a very unspoken way, you can tell that they're emotionally connected. Like, you can tell that Nate, there's a lot to Nate that we're not privy to, and that probably will be, you know, unveiled layer by layer within his marriage. And even like on this show, he's had some stuff where he's kind of shared a little bit, but that he admires his dad and they're so close because of that. So I thought it was sweet. It was cute to even see Stasha get all pulled in, because I totally understood that watching that. It was really sweet to see their relationship. And it's really good to see Nate. You know, Nate, for me, is doing a really great job at just like revealing himself layer by layer. I think that is genuine, which is why it kind of annoyed me that Stasha kept pushing for this emotional thing, instead of just kind of taking it for what it was. And slowly you're seeing him show up and share, and he shared more this episode, and kind of getting his letter was, you know, showing a different side of him, and just letting him kind of give himself over time, instead of faking it and giving you this big I love you on day 3 and then not even having actions that reflect that. So I'm enjoying watching him. I like that Nate kind of stands up for himself. You know, I like that he, past a certain point, told Stasha, you know, this is not gonna work if you keep doing this. I like that when they were in the group dynamic and everybody's kind of, you know, chatting and kind of pacifying Morgan, he was the one to say, listen, what's like, essentially, like, what's with the attitude? Because every time we see you, you're on this. There's nothing else that we get, and we see a particular demeanor. I don't think that's all that there is with Ben, but I do think he's probably like that a lot of the time, most of the time, and we're seeing you in a completely different way. So what's the deal with that? I do like that he is not going to let people run all over him, and you're gonna probably get what you see with him, and I think that's gonna be good for Stasha, because if he wasn't like that, she's great. I really like a lot of aspects of her, but I do think that she could run all over you if you let her. So she needs someone who will kind of let her meander and let her get her quirks out. I think everybody needs that, but then at some point someone just challenge you and be like, okay, wait a minute, like, you're doing too much, because this is going to be a problem. And although it works in some arenas in your life, it's not going to work here, and you're going to have to stretch as well for this to work. I like that he does that. I think that's beneficial for her. I enjoyed seeing her kind of meet with her surrogate family when her mom moved, and she ended up finishing like the year or year and a half with them, and seeing that connection, and seeing you know, the man who kind of played a father figure in that time for her. I love seeing that, because we know her dad isn't in her life, and that's a real sore spot for her. And just watching her have that really nice surrogate family, and her letter, I think everything is like progressing along with them pretty well. You know, they have had some hiccups, but like, who doesn't? What couples doesn't? So they are enjoyable to watch. And yeah, that's Stasha and Nate. Next, we have Alexis and Justin. So Justin, the first thing that comes to mind for me is that Justin had to, I believe, did he give away the dog, or is the dog is not coming back? The dog, I guess, is acting up in whatever camp she is in, I believe. So he's not coming back. So we saw that to be a struggle for him. I saw a lot of your comments where you said you don't think he should give up the dog in this 8 weeks, see if the relationship progresses. That's sad for him. You know, that's a big step, and that's a big thing to kind of let go of. And I actually, as I was reading your comments, I was thinking, yeah, you know, I can kind of see why they might say, hey, let's have the dog stay at his friend's house just in case, as we see what happens. Because you know, Alexis and Justin's relationship it's a little shaky. You know, I think emotionally, I think they like each other. I don't know about love. I mean, I know they've said it, but you know, I think that Justin operates in a very high emotional space all the time, and can get wrapped up in that. And I don't think that Alexis does. I think she has a lot of emotions beyond the surface, but I do think she's logical enough. And I don't think she's in love with him. I think she loves him as a person, and maybe somebody that she's really enjoying, and somebody who surprised her in this process. But this in love, I just feel, for me, and I think for a lot of people, it comes with so much more responsibility and awareness than just like the newness of things. I mean, but to each their own, because some people believe in love at first sight, and that works for them. But I think that we're seeing that they've struggled with their relationship. And so it's like, if we would have waited until we would have said, I loved you after these debacles, like, would we have said it? But I do like seeing that they kind of got to a place where they said, okay, this isn't working. And specifically Alexis kind of, you know, led that. This isn't working. I don't want to be in this space. And so how do we get to a place where we get to like carte blanche? And they did. And they got to a place where they're almost starting over. And, you know, that was nice to see, because sometimes you're going to have to do that. Like in a marriage, you're going to have to like take a time out and say, okay, we keep doing this. And at this point, what is the point? Is there a point here, or are we just caught in this unfortunate circle that we keep doing? And can we find a way to break it and let things go and move on genuinely. So that was good to see. It was good to see their backgrounds. It was good to see Alexis kind of identify why she may show up in particular ways and how that hinders relationships, hinders emotional connection. And I would have loved to hear how she's working on it, because I know she said she's working on it, but I'm glad she's aware enough to say, this is where I have learned this, and I know that there's something that I need to shift in order for it not to hinder me in the future. So yeah, that's Alexis and Justin. I mean, jury's still out on them. I don't know. Jury's still out on them. I don't necessarily see them going the distance, but you guys, I would love to see most people who want to be together and I think are a good match. I would love to see them actually end up together, because I think it's great. The other couples that have stayed together, I think it's really great. But we don't always get to see that. So I don't know. I don't know what Alexis and Justin, I don't have high hopes, but we'll take it week by week. Last but not least, we have Mitch and Kristen. So dare I say, you guys, this week that I kind of had a soft spot for Mitch. Listen, I know. But you know, when you kind of get to know like people's stories, which having worked with so many people over the years, like I have to see people in very layered ways as a therapist, because I just, you know, you just cannot take people the way that you see them straight off. Like people are so multifaceted. There's so many things that make us up. And you just can't judge people based on the minute information that you might have on them. There's so many things that create a person. There's so many experiences. And a lot of times when you're able to connect the dots, you give them grace. That doesn't mean you have to like them. That doesn't mean that you have to forgive them or, you know, make excuses for them. But when you understand a little bit, there's like a shift that happens there where you're like, I get that. You know, I get that. And I get how can that could become this. Because I think we're all, you know, a product of that. Whereas the way that we are, it's connected to some stuff. And there's some great stuff about us. There's some stuff that needs work for every one of us. So it was good to see Mitch, like, literally take that chip off his shoulder and be vulnerable and be transparent. And watching him at the cemetery with his wife, that got me choked up, honestly. I mean, that was hard to see, you know. And then you're seeing him kind of like in his emotionality with that whole experience and talking to her about that, sharing pictures and the letter to himself. You can see that the chip on his shoulder comes from like the defense mechanism of being, you know, isolated so much, whether that was because he did things to be isolated or made choices in which he was isolated. But that kind of chips away at a person and they become like someone with a wall up and become someone who, I don't need you before you tell me that you don't need me. And it shows up in a lot of ways, but there are nuances there beyond the surface that if they put that down, because they are responsible for putting it down so people could see, then you see a completely different person. And I was like, man, if we would have gotten to know this Mitch at the beginning of the season, gosh, you know, what difference that would have made. And if Kristen would have gotten to know him, and I know that there are like steps to this, but you know, it just shows that there's a lot more there. And what I liked about his letter was that he was acknowledging how he plays a part in his own stuff, like, and the conversation afterward when he was talking about his need to be vulnerable and his need to be transparent and why that is. I really enjoyed seeing that. I feel like this is the stuff that matters and this is the stuff that counts, and that could be a saving grace for them. I don't know. The thing with Mitch is that he definitely has a world view though, that is very specific. And you know, they're like the biggies, like I said last week, the non-negotiables, where if you're not really on the same page with your partner, then you know, it's gonna be a problem, or it might not work out. Like there's just some stuff you just have to be on the same page about, otherwise it'll be a problem throughout the relationship. But outside of that, him and Kristen surprisingly seem to be doing well. And I think that is also, it's attributed to Kristen's desire to be more authentic to herself. And I love that she has, given herself permission to stop pretending and stop walking on eggshells and say that this behavior is not serving me. And so I need to be myself. And it's almost like love it or leave it. Like these next 4 weeks, I'm going to do me. I'm going to show you me. I'm not going to tiptoe. I'm not going to, try to make up for, day 2 on the honeymoon or make up for what I think you want. And if you like it, you like it. And if you don't, I'm okay with that. Like there is strength in that. And you can't do anything but respect that. And I think if he is willing to be humble, because there's a lot of humility needed in marriage, this connection, there's no space for like pride and ego, then I think, who knows, they could surprise us. I don't know because it was 1 episode, but if I'm going based off of this, there is potential there where I didn't think there was before. But do I think that they're like, hitting it out the park as a couple? No, but I think they've done great considering how they started, to be honest. Like considering how they started, I think they have turned it around and worked through a lot of things the best way they can. And they seem to be enjoying each other for the most part. She says she really enjoys him. And I think that he's genuinely surprised at how much he enjoys her and like kind of feels bad that he got in his own way and kind of hurt her in the process at the beginning. And I think, we'll see. We will see. But I kind of liked what I was seeing. And at least it gave me better insight to, why people are showing up the way that they're showing up. Dr. Pepper came this week. That's Kristen and Mitch, you guys. Dr. Pepper came this week. I love that Dr. Pepper. She's rarely there, but when she comes in, she comes with the boom. And I mean, she met with all the couples. I always think that she's pretty helpful. And I love that Dr. Pepper's like the OG, and she doesn't pretend. She'll say what she needs to say. So I think that she's always pretty helpful with them. I love that. One of the things that sticks out to me this week was when, she was talking to Stasha and said, well, you didn't marry you. Like, I love that. It was very like, I've been here for a while on this planet. I know what I'm talking about. I've been married. Like, you didn't marry yourself. Like, essentially get over yourself. Like, if you married yourself, it probably wouldn't work out. So there's that. Like, I love that she kind of she doesn't beat around the bush. So Dr. Pepper's always great. And yeah, I thought it was a great, wholesome episode. I love seeing the depth. I love seeing people like genuinely get together. And, we'll see about Morgan and Ben. They're the only ones who weren't really a high note at all in this episode. All right, guys, I am done. Thank you for watching. As always, don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. And don't forget to get your card game, a sip and share, a fun way to be nosy. And I will see you guys next week. Everyone have a wonderful week.